Yasmin, how are you, lovely?
I'm really good. How are you going?
That's amazing. You're glowing. It might be the ring light, but you're still glowing through the ring light as well. I'm amazing. What have you been up to this fine Wednesday?
Oh my goodness, so many things. We've been packing orders for Cacao Collective today. So had my cacao hat on this morning. I've had my cacao as well. I've been reading and tinkling about, really finding some new packaging for products.
Amazing. And I'm pretty sure
for some that's not exciting, but for me, that's like best day ever.
You know what? I've had a few businesses and I've worked in graphic design and packaging before, and finding good packaging and like having a good package for your products is, for me, it's also I'm gonna say guilty pleasure, but like it just feels nice.
It does.
Your product's in something nice, and that represents
so satisfying.
your product. Yeah. That's the word, satisfying. Yeah, and I've ordered some cacao, so it's on its way. It's probably already reached my parents' place, but I can't wait. I love cacao. Why cacao? What is cacao and why?
Oh, okay. We want to go here. Let's do it.
Why not? I feel like if we keep people hanging, they'll be like, what's that?
What is this thing? Okay, so I'm going to go. There's like two little prongs I have to go to here because I need to share why I chose to start this business, cacao business, because I think that's really interesting too. And also why cacao in general, like what the hell. And
okay,
I feel like the first one's going to take us there anyway.
Okay, so I think even better to get us to there, we'll start with you do incredible stuff. We've met on Instagram. Well, met on Instagram. We've been connected on Instagram for a long time. And we've watched each other's journey, and it's crazy because we've both seen when we were both at the really like start and beginning, and now where we are now, and we were just chatting before, and we're like buzzing for each other because we're like, this is so amazing. And we're growing and going to the next level. And it's amazing to see that social media support is amazing. So we met randomly in Bali at a cafe. I remember Yasmin being like, Carlo. And I was like, what? This is my famous moment. And then we briefly met there, and then you're over in Perth. I'm over in Melbourne. So we haven't connected in person yet, but it will happen again soon.
Yeah.
Let us out of the borders. And I've watched your journey, but for people that don't know about you or what you do or have seen your journey, can you give us a wrap up of your life from where you started to where you are now? And then obviously the cacao will probably find its place in there.
It will. Okay. So, man, it's been so cool to watch us both grow and over the years. It's just epic. So where I started was actually really interesting. I want to go right back to when I left school, finished school year 12. I was set to do architecture, and then I didn't get high enough results. So then I went into graphic design, and then feeling the pressure and the heat, being like, I'm 17, but still there's no time. And what am I going to do with my life? And like having that, that heavy existential crisis at 17, which is so laughable now.
It happens.
But it felt so real then, right? I decided to take a gap year. And I really feel like that gap year was such a pivotal moment in my journey, even though at the time it just felt like, it's just a gap year. Like it doesn't mean anything. But really, had I have gone down the road of university first and not explored all the other things that I did, I don't even know if I would be here right now, which is so cool. So I took a gap year, I started working, and I started to get into fitness. As you do, you leave school, you start like, okay, maybe I need a hobby, maybe I need to like get in shape. Wasn't really a sporty person. So I was very musical, very creative. I did arts, I did drama. Like I did all of those sort of, artistic things at school, and I never really was into like sport or physical activity. But then on the flip side, leaving school, I got so into it, and for me it really gave me this feeling of strength, and like I could do anything and I could really achieve things. I think when you come out of school, sometimes your confidence is a little knocked. School's a really rough place sometimes, and it can really make you question who you are, and like, am I worthy? Am I good enough? Like all of those things are such a part of being a teenager. And so finding the gym, I sort of threw myself into that. And I also threw myself into it, I think, because I was so lost in my life at that point, even though like 17, you can be lost at that time. I just didn't know what the fuck to do. So I was like, I'm going to throw all of my eggs in this basket and just go for it, love it, enjoy it. I started to compete. I did all of that thing, which is just so weird now because it's like a total other life.
So that's like fitness modeling, bodybuilding.
Yeah, bikini competitions, all of those things. And I guess a year, maybe a year and a half into that, I was like, oh, you know what? I want to be a PT. I want to share this with others. It made me feel so good. So I was like, I want to share this with other people. I want to help people. And I really believe that, you know, my whole life, I think I've always wanted to assist people in some way, be of service. And for me at that time, it was through the vehicle of PT. So I went down the fitness route. I became a PT. I did all of those things. And fast forward maybe 4 years into that, I started to discover a pattern. And I think everyone gets aware of this. You know, when you go through the same thing all the time, you start to notice patterns, right? And that was at the time where mindset became more trendy online, like Instagram. There were quotes, you know, mindset became this motivation thing. It all became more, I guess, accessible. Yep. And so I started to kind of reflect, and I was like, okay, I'm coaching all these women. I'm helping these women transform their bodies. Yet I started to feel like I was becoming a bit of a therapist in my sessions with people. We weren't really talking about training. We were talking about all the things outside of training that were influencing their results or influencing the way that they showed up. And, you know, one thing that kept me so mind boggled at the time was, why am I working with these people, getting them great results, helping them feel good in their body, and yet they're still fucking miserable and they still actually don't love themselves? And for me at that point, I was like, oh, there must be a missing piece. Like, what is it, right? And so I started to get curious, and I started to sort of read some books and put my feelers out there and start to research, you know, what is this mindset thing? What does the mind have to do with our bodies and with success and with feeling good? And it sort of took me down my own self-development route, where I started to reflect inward and go, am I happy? Do I love myself, or is it just my body that's making me feel worthy or valid, and that's it? And suddenly realizing, wow, I think I'm a bit one-sided here. I'm focusing so much on my physical body that's the only thing I'm holding on to right now. And that's quite brittle, right? When we only sort of glorify ourselves or attach to one part of who we are, it becomes really brittle, because if that thing is to slip or waver or change, which, you know, fucking life, everyone's changing, we're all changing, everything's evolving constantly, then for me, I started to feel really nervous about that. And I was like, maybe this is not the best way to move forward in my life if I'm just focusing so heavily on one aspect. What if that goes? What if I get sick? What if I get an injury and I can't train? Who am I then? And what does that mean? So as it happens, the universe always delivers. And suddenly there was this guy called Paul, who was an NLP teacher. He was teaching NLP at the time to personal trainers to help them, you know, bridge the gap between the mind and the body. And I was like so intrigued by this guy. And I remember calling him up and being like, okay, what's this NLP thing? I'm really interested. And at that time, I'd gone through some really interesting changes. I had a guy that I was seeing who I really was so connected to die suddenly. I had my best friend commit suicide. Like, I had so much stuff come up in those years leading up to that point. And I remember being on the phone to this guy, breaking down into tears, because he said, you know, why do you want to be in this course? What do you want it for you? And I was just like in tears going, I don't know how to move forward. I don't know how to help myself. I don't know how to feel good. I don't know how to let go of the past. Like, I'm really struggling with myself. And that was a real turning point. And it started the journey of learning about the mind, learning about emotions, learning about shadow work, learning about, you know, all these different parts that I had no idea at the time about. And going through that journey, I studied, you know, with him for a couple of years, and it completely transformed my life. I was so much more self-aware. I was so much more internal versus external about my life. And I felt like I could take so much more power and actually progress, you know, feeling like I could rise above being the victim of my circumstances and my world, and feel like I could actually affect change in my life from inward places, right? And I guess fast forward 2 years from there, you know, I started to really delve into trauma work, inner child healing, childhood trauma, all of those things that for me are really at the root and the base of where people are at as adults. You know, a lot of the stuff that people feel today as adults, like unworthiness or not good enoughness or shame, you know, all of those things can really be traced back to, you know, those early years of between 0 to 7. And for me, you know, that's just where my passion lies. It's my joy. I love everything to do with, you know, trauma and healing and inner child work. It's just where I love to live. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what has taken me to here now, where I'm working with people constantly to help them resolve a lot of that childhood trauma, to help them integrate their own inner child so that they're not living their life as that wounded girl or boy, but they're actually able to lead as an adult man or woman and affect change in their lives in a really beautiful synergistic way. So that's kind of where that path has taken me.
Epic.
So epic. And then Cacao is just a beautiful little offset, I guess, that came about last year. My partner and I have been, you know, drinking cacao for a very long time now. Every day we have it. It's such a beautiful aspect of my daily routine. And we just kind of got to a point where we're like, okay, we're buying a lot of cacao. It's expensive when you've got a really hectic cacao obsession. And the first thought was just like, can we find a wholesaler where we can just buy in bulk for ourselves? Yep. And we found this amazing source. We, you know, we tasted it. There's so many different strands of cacao, which is amazing. And this particular strand was just so beautiful. It's a really robust chocolatey aroma. It's very rich. We just fell in love straight away. And suddenly it just dawned on us. We're like, hang on a minute. This is an opportunity. Why don't we sell it and share it with the world? It's just so powerful. So again, like it just unfolds.
That is crazy. And here's the thing I want to note, because obviously I've known you for a while. There's so much more in this. That was a really good wrap up.
That was such a quick wrap. That was hard for me. I'm quite proud.
Keynote version of the story. But it's incredible what you've done and to go from there and seeing all those things. I remember you saying that, you know, if you didn't take that gap year, if you had have continued with maybe graphic design or architecture, how would your life be different? And it makes me wonder when I've spoken to people about this, or even myself looking back on what I did and didn't do and go, maybe it's all happened the way it should. Like, yes, it would be, there's so many different parallel universes that we could be doing, you know, so many different things with our lives, but we ended up here, and how cool. Like, I actually love where I've ended up. Like that's amazing. And I can relate to so many parts of your journey in terms of, you know, the identity crises, and then, you know, that inwards turn, like working on the outside and always being like, yes, this is good or kind of, but what's that internal thing that's still not satisfied in there? And that was one of my questions that came up during that, is like, why do you think, and I see it's happening so much now, still, is why do we focus so much on that external fulfillment and miss out on that? We all want the internal fulfillment. That's what we're aiming for, but why do we always go to the external first?
That's a big question. From my point of view, I believe it comes down to a lot of what we're taught and how we're conditioned and programmed, not just from maybe our parents, but also from society, from school, you know, what we see on social media. A lot of what we're conditioned with is this underlying, you know, belief that it is external and that our happiness is outside, and that, you know, if you buy that dress, you're going to feel good. If you have that amount of money or that car, you're going to feel good. You know, it's the way we market products a lot of the time, is we associate an external material or, you know, external thing, and we associate that with a feeling, and that feeling isn't outside, right? And I think that's where a lot of people start the journey, is they start to realize, hang on a minute, like if I'm feeling this inside, and it might be influenced by this outside thing, then could it be that I have also influence over that feeling within me from an internal perspective too? And a lot of people, like, it blows my mind, but it's so simple, as a lot of people still don't understand that it's not out there. and that the feelings that you're feeling because of that external thing are inside. And what blows my mind every time is when I speak to people, especially clients who say, you know, I need this because then I'm going to feel this. And I go, hang on a minute. Did you know that you could actually feel that without that thing? Like if that thing never happened, would you just not give yourself permission to feel good? Do you know what I mean? Because to me, that's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to wait for a fucking Lamborghini to feel good? That's a long time. That's a lot of time to waste.
Mm-hmm.
And every time, like for me, it was with the body. I'm sure everyone has their version of it. No matter how lean I got, no matter how good my body looked, it wasn't, again, that satisfaction, that feeling of goodness didn't actually change.
It was almost like never enough.
Never enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that, you know, a lot of our society is based on that thing that it's never enough. So keep chasing more.
Yeah.
And it's that hamster wheel mentality we can all get pulled into sometimes. It's the dangling of the carrot, you know, that's actually what keeps this society turning in a lot of ways, you know, from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think we're all catching on now.
Yeah, well, it's
Time to wake up.
The awakening. It's the awakening. It's the consciousness. It's the awareness of that people are getting. That's showing them that, hey, it's not what they've been saying on TV all this time or what we've been marketed. We can actually change that. And like you said, we can feel it. It was such a beautiful way you put it. So it's like external things, they're always going to be there. We live in a material world in one aspect, the physical realm, then the metaphysical as well. Can we still have nice things, but also feel good?
Absolutely.
Can we have everything we want and feel good as well?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So why don't we?
I'm just going to pause because, why don't we? It's so funny to think that we also believe that we've got to have one or the other too. There's like that duality of going, but if I have those nice things, maybe I'll just feel void as well. There's also that conditioning that only nice things bring you misery, which is totally false too. Like good things are still good things, right? We're here to enjoy this physical realm. You know, I'm a spirit in a body, and this body is here to do things. So I feel like, you know, there's that fine line between, you know, being hyper 3D physical and external and hyper spiritual and metaphysical, where we kind of miss the point a little bit. And we think we have to somehow be the martyr and suffer and live in like, you know, a Hessian sack to somehow mean that we're spiritual or we're enlightened or we're happy.
Yeah.
And I believe, you can have both. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is have both, but as long as you're not relying solely on an external thing to bring you a feeling, then you're all good. You're balanced. As soon as you start relying or being dependent on something external to you or a person or a goal for that feeling of satisfaction, that's when it's time to check in and be like, okay, what am I missing here? You know?
Yeah, I love that. I was about to ask, how do we like notice that? And then what do we do? That check-in is super simple and so easy for people to do. I think it's like we've been shown the duality of you've got people that live in third world countries that have nothing, that are really happy. And we go, but if they're happy, then we should be happy with nothing. And it's like, okay, it's a different culture. It's a different scenario. And then we come into this world and we've seen people that are famous, that are rich, that are all this, that aren't happy. And, you know, some of them take their lives, unfortunately. And we go, okay, so if we have money, we're going to be unhappy and all of this. And then we get told from a young age, and we get shown on fairy tales and movies and all of that, that this is the idealism of what happens. And it's so much programming and it's so confusing. Like I know now, like I'm 26 and I start to look back and go, man, these movies were putting some stories into our head of what it should look like. Yeah. And I remember when, even for myself, like growing up, it was like, if I'm a soccer player, man, I'll have it. Like all of this and all that. And I'm not saying soccer is not a bad thing or anything, but what I wanted was the fame, the money, the girls, all of this. And it's like, but what's actually in here that I actually want? And what can I feel? And that's what I love, that it doesn't surprise me that we're on the same page here, when it's like, you can feel it all internally, but you can also have a good life. When does it get to the point where your ego is going, well, I want Dolce & Gabbana bag or the Lamborghini. Is that still okay though? Can we still want the Ferrari?
I feel like we can. Like I think, for me, this year I've been doing a little bit more of investing and really diversifying where I put my money, and I'm really thinking of things from like an investment perspective. And that's really, I've always wanted really like luxury cars. Like I love cars. Like nice. I've always loved cars. I've always loved nice cars. Not because I feel like it's going to give me anything like special, like somehow I'm going to be above everyone because I have one, but simply just because I really appreciate the engineering and the detail and the thought that goes into manufacturing luxury cars, basically. But then sometimes I'm like, well, from an investment perspective, if I buy a brand new car, like it's going to depreciate and all these things. But then I'm like, oh God, what do I do? To be honest, I think it's okay to want the Lamborghini, the fucking Ferrari, if you want it, if you just want it and you have it, you can have it, like more power to you, like have it. I feel like there's so much stigma around each thing. It's like we've been led to feel guilty for having good things because there's other people suffering, and somehow like we've got to have guilt in our happiness and in our joy. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes, it's also looking at how can my joy amplify and actually, help the world? How can my abundance, my wealth amplify and help more people too, and how does maybe having a luxury item actually help me amplify that or appreciate it, what I have more? So sometimes for me, it's like that gratitude thing, like what we appreciate appreciates. And if we stay in that beautiful vortex, it does expand and it does multiply and it does amplify. And we are able to actually help affect change in other ways too.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Like that is so good. It's so beautifully said. It's kind of like if we don't, I relate it back to, so this is like material stuff and appreciating gratitude. It's kind of like if we hold ourselves back, by fearing it'll affect somebody else in a negative way. Well, unfortunately, there's negative, positive everywhere. You're just not shining your own light. So you depriving yourself of having these things that you really want or maybe desire in life, not from a point of I must have them or I won't be happy without them, but from a place of like, I enjoy these things and everyone's got their own tastes and likes. Yeah. If that is going to do something for you, and it doesn't, you don't have the attachment of guilt and shame and all that sort of stuff, that's only going to, like you said, affect people around you and the world and the community and all those things because we're all connected. So heck yeah. Like that's my thing now is that if it's a heck yes, do it. Like, is it the most, like you were saying about investing, like last year, start of last year, I bought a van, brand new van because I wanted to live the van life because I thought that would bring me happiness and freedom and joy and all those things. And it did. For a point. And then when I ended up on a beach, getting very sunburnt because I burn easily, as you can probably see if you're watching on YouTube. Bit of sun yesterday. I'm gone. And I was on a beach and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not happy. I thought this would bring me happiness. And then I sold the van and bought a smaller car. Not a luxury car, not yet. But bought a smaller car and everyone's like, oh, you lost like 10 grand on that. Like you should have just kept it and all of this. And I'm like, but it wasn't a heck yes anymore. And that's okay. Same with businesses. If it's a heck yes and you want to do something, do it. Like obviously there's a heck yes for a reason. Yeah. But don't attach, like I found so important that not to attach those, this is going to be the sole thing of my happiness, but also not to attach on this guilt trip that we go on. And other people, it can be influenced by other people, like our parents, our friends going, why did you do that?
You should do this.
you should. And that's the thing, you shouldn't should on people. And that's kind of a contradicting, but it works in there. So what happens when someone has these things, or in your opinion, when we hold on to that, we get these things that we want, but we hold on to guilt. What does that then do for us when we get things?
I feel like, from an energetic perspective, I think it fucks up the juju completely. And I think it blocks things out. So I feel like we become magnets for attracting bad things as well. Like if I'm carrying guilt about that thing, all I'm doing is just robbing myself of my own joy. So I'm never going to feel satisfied anyway, because I'm just like, I'm blocking that. No, can't hold it. And you know, from my perspective, it's like, it's really also then an opportunity. It's like, if I can be aware that I'm feeling guilty for something, can I use that as an opportunity too? Can I be open to, what could that actually teach me then? If I can be aware for a second that I'm carrying a lot of guilt around, why might that be? Where does that guilt come from? Who does it come from? Do I feel like someone's putting it on me? Do I feel like I'm putting it on myself? Why might I be blocking myself from this joy right now? Why might I be, you know, sabotaging my own abundance or success or happiness? Why might that be? And then sometimes you come to the fact that it's still that same fucking belief you've held on to for ages. Or you might be like, oh, I'm feeling guilty because such and such had a really bad breakup and their life's fucked right now. And they're a really good friend of mine, but here I am in my fucking nice car living my life, right? And one thing I really want to share with everyone who's listening today, because here's something I used to get trapped in a lot. And the fact is that there are always going to be people having a greater and a lesser time than you, always, constantly. You can't change that. No matter even if you have a Daihatsu. I think Jay Shetty did a really great video once about it, and it was like, you know, you might have like just a really simple little buzz box. Something I used to have was a Ford Fiesta, like a little toaster car, it was a little silver one. I loved it to death. 2004, like it was an old car, and I only just recently got a new one. And it's like, someone could not even have a car. And then they're looking at you going, you fucking bitch, you got this, you've even got a car, right? Or someone has a bike and they're like, oh, you've got a car and I've only got a bike. But then someone doesn't even have a bike and they're like, well, you've got a bike, right? So there's always going to be this comparison. And yeah, sure, we can compare ourselves all the time, constantly. But it's like, what for? What is that going to do? Is that going to help us or hinder us? And what would be the point of that then, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going, that is the nature of this universe we're in, is that there are always people learning lessons, living their lives, living journeys as souls. They're here to experience it all. And so are we. So if someone's in a shittier car than you, let them be there. Let them be on that journey. Why do we feel we need to somehow protect them from that, or feel like we have to take away their own journey just because we feel uncomfortable with it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it also has something to say of, where are we in comfort with discomfort? Where do we relate to that stuff? Because if we feel uncomfortable with someone else's discomfort, why is that? Right? What are we still not comfortable with in ourselves? It's the same. It's always that mirror. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like I'm going into a tangent, but I'll stop.
No, I love it. I love it. And I think it's a great kind of in-way into, do you think that, and this is something, because a lot of your stuff is all about alchemy, and, you know, for the listeners that don't know what alchemy is, I'd love your explanation on that. But then when we're going into the inner child stuff and the trauma, do you think that that also plays a part in this, when we feel this guilt for the things we do in our life or things that we don't do?
100%.
Yeah.
It's like one of my main themes I'm talking about right now, because it's so apparent, and something that dawned on me early this year, actually. The more I learn about trauma, the more I start to realize, oh, whoa, like it's affecting us here. But I like to think of, you know, our nervous system and our capacity for receiving is kind of one and the same a little bit. And I like to think of, you know, us as having like a receiving bucket, right? And like, let's say like, you know, we've got like a little bucket that we start with, and, you know, with trauma and things that we carry and hold on to and don't heal, it affects that capacity in the bucket. So what it does is perhaps it puts a few holes in the bucket, or maybe it like blocks it somehow so the capacity gets smaller. And so we start living our lives and we wonder why like these good things happen, but somehow we can't hold them. We sabotage them, or we reject them, or we block them out, or we convince ourselves that it's the wrong thing. We should feel guilty for it, right? We create these beliefs to protect ourselves. And really what's going on is we have such a constricted capacity because of what we've been through, perhaps. Our nervous system is constricted, we're like coiled. And the thing is that if you think of, you know, holding excitement versus holding stress or anxiety, they're actually the same in the nervous system. So if we can't hold on one angle, if we can't hold a level of stress, and usually that's, you know, affected by trauma, because it affects the nervous system, it affects our capacity to hold stress and discomfort and challenge, then that means we're also limiting our capacity to experience excitement or joy. So they're kind of, again, it's that dual forces, right? So if we're not able to hold one, then of course we can't hold the other. And so what happens is people get these small capacities, and they keep going through their lives not wondering, why can't I hold good things? Why can't I receive more money? Why can't I ask for that pay rise? You know, all of those things. And for me, sometimes, you know, from that perspective, and it's not everything, it's not, you know, it's not just gospel and it's not the full truth, it's just an aspect of it, right? And just from one perspective, which is that trauma nervous system perspective. As we heal that trauma and we start to re-regulate our nervous system and ourselves, what we allow is for that capacity to slowly expand. And we're able to meet new edges each time and experience more and more and more over time. And what's really interesting is, like, when you hit an edge, you're going to find that you're going to want to fucking sabotage, you're going to have a tantrum, you're going to like feel triggered perhaps. Like, we all have an edge, and no matter how big the capacity is, we still have an edge. And with every new experience that we call in, it helps us to stretch the edge. But again, if we're not actively, you know, participating in that healing and participating in knowing that there's always going to be an edge, and that, you know, being compassionate, hey, that's okay, you've just hit your edge. Wow, yay, we hit an edge, a new one. You know, when we kind of approach it in that way, we coil, we constrict, and we retract. And so our capacity gets smaller again. So as we heal, the capacity grows and our ability to hold more grows too. And so then what happens is we find that we can hold those good relationships. We don't sabotage them anymore. We can let more money into our lives because we might feel worthy as well of that, but we also, our capacity for holding it has enlarged. And that's a really interesting perspective, but it's something I see a lot with clients, and even myself going through my own journey, is watching that capacity slowly expand over time. And again, you know, where that gratitude comes into place is being grateful always of, oh my goodness, my capacity to hold has grown. I'm so proud of myself. I'm so grateful. And every time we lean in with that gratitude, it helps us expand even more. Because that gratitude also brings us to a state of coherence and of safety. So it makes receiving feel safe, relaxes the nervous system, and all of these things go into play, you know? It's so interesting.
Amazing. And it's such a deep talk about inner work and stuff that, you know, where we both dive into a lot for ourselves and also with our clients. And it's, you even host different ceremonies and events and stuff like that, where it happens live in person, which is incredible. So a lot of this is like, the question is, do we all have trauma?
Oh, man, like how long's a piece of string? But like, yeah, in varying degrees, I definitely think we do. In varying degrees. Like for me, trauma is a massive scale. It's not like a one size fits all thing. And those varying degrees might be like, you know, perhaps having like your toy taken away and feeling kind of abandoned, or like you know, feeling rejected, or like those little things. It could be getting told off or shamed as a child because, you know, you threw a toy at your sister's face or something and your parents got angry and you felt shame for that, and that's something you carry. It can be something simple like that, or it could be, you know, things like sexual abuse, you know, physical abuse, assault, all those things as well. But trauma is a big scale. And I think sometimes we use the word trauma, it's so like loaded as a word, and people are like, oh God, no, I don't have trauma, ew. And it's like, to me, I love explaining that to people when I'm like, trauma is not just one thing, it's a varying degree and it's a large scale. And it doesn't mean just, you know, what we usually associate to trauma is like really hectic, heavy experiences that are really, really traumatic. But the definition of trauma is experiencing any distress without resolve. Any distress without resolve. And why do we have a lot of childhood trauma? Because as a child, especially between 0 and 7, you don't necessarily have the capacity or the skill set or the resources to soothe or heal, like to soothe yourself or to create resolve for yourself. You rely on your parents and the adults around you to do that for you. So what happens if you get told off, you feel distress in that moment and there's no resolve for it? Your parent doesn't come and give you a hug and say, don't worry, it's okay, we still love you. You just can't do that thing where you throw a toy at your sister's face. It's so simple. And yet those can be the small moments that do, you know, have an impact on us slightly, if not in big ways.
And then you mix it with, you know, your teenage years of school and this and that, and then other things parents say, or maybe even big events like death and car accidents and stuff like that. And like you said, if it's not resolved, it's kind of held on to as in, oh, this is the pattern. And it's like, you've only created that in your mind because that's how you experienced it.
Yeah.
And not releasing that, not working through that or finding a resolve is then related into trauma. So what happens when we hold a lot of trauma in the body and in the mind over time and we don't work through them or address them?
Well, we start to live through the lenses of that trauma and it becomes our life, our constant reality, basically, like from a really simple perspective.
Yeah.
What we don't heal almost becomes the lens we look through the world at. So then we're constantly seeing the world as a confirmation of what we've experienced. And we're constantly attracting experiences and people that confirm those beliefs and patterns and make us feel the same ways we've always felt in our bodies. Because in some ways that's like safe, right? But we never get to thrive. So we're constantly living from that limited, constricted space. And then we feel victimized by life. We feel powerless. We feel like we have no ability to affect change. You know, poor me. Look at all these bad things that keep happening. Look at all the people that keep telling me I'm wrong, I'm not worthy, or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I think the hardest pill to swallow as a human being is also to realize that I am 50% participating in this reality. I am participating even if I don't want to acknowledge that I am. Whether it's unconscious or conscious, I am always participating in my world, in my life. And taking that ownership of your part of that participation and you're part of that experience is so hard sometimes. And I really get that for people. It's hard because it takes us away from being able to keep using our experiences as a way to, you know, warrant perhaps our poor decisions and behaviors. And sometimes, you know, again, I want to experience more and I want to experience better. But with that, the cost of that is I have to show up. I have to take responsibility. I have to now take ownership of my stuff because yes, a lot of the things that may happen to us aren't our fault. But if we're living as the example of it and we're still being the wounded girl, acting out all of our trauma in our lives with our bosses and our partners and our friends, but that's on us. So it's up to us to begin to heal that, which is always the harder pill, right?
The self-responsibility pill.
Damn it.
Yeah, and it's almost like we attach this trauma to our identities as well. Like that is me. That's what happened to me. Therefore, I am that.
Yeah, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And there's that fear, right? Who the fuck would I be without it? And most people are terrified with the thought that they're not in control. And there isn't a lot of certainty in life sometimes, right? And that is exactly what keeps us like, well, I'm going to stay here because it's what I know, even if it's shit, and I have to face the unknown. Yeah.
Because then I have, like you said, certainty in who I am. It's these things that happened to me or that happened in my life. And if I don't know who I am, it is a scary place, but it also brings with it so much like more awareness and so much creativity and things that you can step into. What happens when we release trauma? When we work through it in the many different modalities we can, what's then the result of that?
So much, so much. You can experience so much more energy. So if you think about it, a lot of trapped emotion and unresolved trauma creates a lot of like, it's like depressive, right? That stuff's depressive. So you're going to feel a lot lighter. You might feel like you've got like this reservoir of energy you have access to now. You might even find that your nervous system is different. So your ability to handle stress and discomfort is going to grow and change. And you're going to find like, whoa, that thing that I usually experience, in the past made me really freak out or made me really stressed or made me angry. And now I'm finding I can't get angry anymore. And now I'm finding I can't get shitty or I can't react. You're less reactive. Mm-hmm. You're more present with your life because you're not living again as a product of the past or living through that lens. You're actually like right here. I'm here in this moment right now. That stuff's back there. That doesn't matter. Right now is this moment. Mm-hmm. And you're able to actually experience your life from that present point of view, which is way better and way more comfortable and way more juicy. So then maybe you get to experience more happiness, more joy, like a richer, deeper sense of that emotion, right? Because we might have varying degrees of that even through trauma. You still feel happy, you can still feel joyful, but perhaps you only had glimmers back then, and now you're like, well, I can access these feelings, these heightened feelings on a more regular basis, which feels amazing. Maybe you find you can be more compassionate towards yourself, more accepting of others, more compassionate to others. There's so many benefits. Mm-hmm. You might even find your nervous system's actually more robust because of it too. Everything's intertwined.
Yeah, and I think even with my experience, is like you just feel so much more free. Like these things that you've held on to for so long, whether it's thoughts, beliefs, conditions.
Liberating.
Yeah, and it's something that at the same time was like, oh, like this feels natural. Everything else felt so heavy, and I had to try and be something. It was almost like the masks that we wear of like, this is my identity, and it's like, hang on, but if it's not actually what feels right internally, then again, we're trying to do something else and we're holding on to something. And like I was saying about the soccer career, like once I let that go of like, I can be whatever I want to be, and then other trauma that came with that and trying to get approval and all of that came with it, it's like, oh, I'm free to do what I want now, and the things that bring me joy, and those feelings are like, wow, like life goes to a whole new level. And that's what we can get to when we bring awareness to these things, but also start to do the work. And that can be in, like I said, so many different modalities, contact Yasmin, contact myself. There's so many ways that we can go through it, but I don't think there's a right or wrong way, but there's so many. And I think it's a lifelong thing. I don't think we get to a point where we heal all our trauma, but it's like the more that we can work on it, the more bits of freedom we get.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I love that, Carlo. That's beautifully put, brother. So amazing. You just feel it's more peace, right? You're less in conflict, isn't it?
And like you said, you've got that capacity, bigger capacity in your life to hold all things, not just I've only got capacity for this experience, and if that doesn't happen, then I'm going to stress out and burn out and all these things. And it's like, that's not, I don't think anyone signed up for that. No. But we've been told we have.
Exactly. I definitely feel we become more coherent participants in this world. Mm-hmm. And from that place, like, as you know, a lot of magic can happen and a lot of beautiful opportunities, and perhaps people become more useful to others from that place of peace, because we're not projecting our stuff onto others. We're actually receptive now. We're able to actually receive other people and what they might be going through too, rather than going, I'm hearing you, but actually I'm going to relay my own story and live there instead of being present with you and really showing up there too. So I feel like it makes us better humans. Like, it really does.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I love that. Would you say you're living your purpose?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how can other people live their purpose?
I feel like, I think the best thing that we can do to access our purpose is really almost just going through it, right? So, going through the healing process, focusing on yourself first, because I think it's really easy to bypass our stuff by focusing on, I've got to find my purpose, and I've got to because we might be still chasing approval or validation for living it, or we're still chasing that high from being in it. And I can tell you right now that I've never felt more at peace and content than I do now. And it's not because I've really fucking, it's not like I have a Lamborghini or I've done anything super crazy in my life. You know, it's all just evolving. But the contentment is on a whole other level. And it's not because I've achieved more. It's because I'm more at peace with myself. And I'm able to enjoy the small moments as well. And I've let go of this needing to have a purpose or be anything special or someone special, because we're all special and we're all not special at the same time, right? We're just all drops in the ocean doing our bit. So I think the biggest thing is go inward first, like go through your stuff, and then let that be the light that guides you forward into maybe what you might be here to do. And let me tell you, like, there's a lot of treasure that lies in that healing process. There's a lot of insight, wisdom. You know, you heighten your intuition too. You heighten your inner guidance, you know, system. You heighten your ability to receive messages or downloads, if you want to call it that, when you know, resolve what's blocking it. And from that place, I feel like everything that you step into is naturally more in flow, naturally more aligned. And it's coming from a really authentic place and a place that might feel good. So I always say, like, focus on you, do your growth stuff, like heal some stuff first, and then see where that leads you, and let what naturally feels good or what naturally inspires you or naturally really lights you up to lead the way to that purpose, you know. And I always find that as long as I'm following what feels good, I'm usually on track. The minute I start feeling not as good about something, it's a sign that I'm like wavered. I'm not really on it, right? And I think maybe our purpose might evolve too. Like maybe it's not the same thing all the time. So that's what I would say, if that really answers the question in a roundabout way.
It does. I love that. It was such an amazing explanation of that too. So what is success to you?
For me right now, because I know this might change, and in a year's time you'll be like, what does success mean? I'm like, it's so different. Me last year didn't have a clue. But right now in this moment, for me, success means being in full freedom of expression, time, choice, and money for me. So it's feeling like my needs are always met. I can enjoy every moment presently. I can choose. I can always be in choice. I can choose how do I want to show up to. I can choose to have a day off. I can choose to work today. Like I have multiple choices always. For me, that feels most successful right now. And feeling like I can be the fullest, you know, expression of me, whatever me is today, you know, just being that expression without feeling blocked or limited by that. For me, that's success right now.
Whoa, it's so similar to mine. I love that. And look, we're not trying to play Go Fish here, guys. Everyone's going to have a unique. Yeah. No wonder why we connected so long ago. I love it. What is the worst thing that has ever happened to you, and how is that the best thing that has ever happened to you?
Oh, I was reflecting on this question before we started this call, and I was like, damn, like there's some pretty bad things that have happened in my life. And it's so funny, like the further you go on your journey, the less magnitude those past events have. So then you're like, I used to think it was the worst thing, but now I'm like not even sure if it was really that bad. But from the old perspective, like it was fucking tragic. So like it's hard for me to pinpoint. Can I say two?
Sure.
I feel like one of the hardest things for me growing up was you know, dealing with a parent who was struggling a lot with mental health. Like for me, that was really, really hard growing up, and trying to navigate that experience, especially as like having a single mum who's dealing with a lot of mental health issues and trauma of her own, and how that really relayed into our relationship in the beginning, the early years. We have a beautiful relationship now, which I'm super grateful for, but the early years were fucking tough. And I know they were tough for her and for me. And so, yeah, they were some of the hardest moments of my life. But they've become the best moments because they've taught me so much. They've made me compassionate. They've made me, you know, able to understand trauma on a different level. It's made me become a lot more relatable. It's allowed me to really understand people on a deeper level, to be very empathic, because you're very attuned to someone else as a child. So you're going to be very empathic. you know, it's really been a blessing for me. And I don't think without that experience, I would really be able to do what I do now. So that was like a must. And sometimes I think maybe like I chose that experience as soul coming down. Like I was like, yep, that's what I need to be here today. And the second thing would be, yeah, being really deeply in love with someone who dies suddenly and not being able to say goodbye. You know, that's one of the hardest, like grief. That grief is one of the hardest things I've ever had to deal with. Ever. But again, that's allowed me to realize, wow, like expressing your emotions and releasing emotions and taking the time to process and to feel is so fucking paramount to our mental, emotional, physical health. Like it's just so fucking important. And I wouldn't, you know, I don't think I would even be on this path if that moment had have happened. And you know, I think that was hard for a lot of people at that time when that special person died. But I think all of us have grown and experienced something beautiful because of it too. So it was a real catalyst for me.
And the fact that you can see, it's not taking away that these things were, you know, terrible at the time, probably traumatic and painful. It's like, what can we learn from it? What can we take? What's the goodness from this situation? At the start, probably a lot harder, but now, you know, months, years on, we go, okay, what have I learned? What's the good in this? Because that's where the lessons are. That's where the beauty is. That's where, you know, our pain then becomes our power.
Yeah. And I really believe there's beauty in everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's that whole, you know, for me, the spiritual path has been realizing that God is everywhere. Like source is everywhere, even through the darkest of places, it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just our perspective that might be keeping us from realizing it. And it's never to take away from the pain or the feeling or to say that that's not bad. Definitely feel it. It is bad. It's shit. But then to move through that to the other side and go, but it was still beautiful. And I'm so lucky to even be human, to be alive, to even feel that. Because that's what it means to be alive.
Deep.
I'm always deep.
Yeah. Heart
People are like,
deep.
let's just have a simple chat. I'm like, I can't do that.
it's always heart deep. That's what we want on the Conscious podcast as well. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
The best advice I've always been given.
Or ever been given?
Ever been given. Best advice. You know, it's actually a really simple piece of advice. And it's really just like, don't rush. There's always enough time. Don't rush. And I think I say that to myself weekly still. There is always enough time and there's no need to rush.
Love that. What advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
Oh man, so many things. Man, like I almost think I wouldn't even give her any advice because I'm like, it was all perfect. And she had everything she needed. And maybe that would be like what I'd say is like, you've got everything you need and everything that you're going through is like exactly where you need to be. And don't feel like you should ever be anywhere else but here. Whoa,
again, very similar to my to my answer. Like it would be like, I love you.
Yeah.
You're gonna figure it out, and just give him a hug.
Yeah, that's all they need.
Because like you said, it's they've got to experience it, but maybe with a bit more love and assurance.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah, I love that. What's the impact that you want to have on people, the community, and the world?
The impact that I want to have, and I feel that's already happening, is to just give people the tools and the permission to access their own healing capacity. and to realize their own healer and hero within, to know that there's nothing external that has all the answers, that they've got it right here, and that's all they need to do is just come right back in.
Mm-hmm. All the answers are within.
Mm-hmm. And just to encourage healing to be really mainstream.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. So final question for the podcast. What does it mean to be conscious?
Oh, great final question. What does it mean to be conscious? To me, it means being able to be aware and so acutely and intimately connected to you and yourself that you know exactly when you're acting out of your unconscious and your beliefs and your programming and your trauma, and being able to, in those moments, choose the way you want to approach it next so that you can break those old patterns. And it's definitely not about being perfect. For me, being conscious is not about being perfect. It's just it's about being really, really attuned to yourself.
Yes, I love it. I love it so much.
I
Yasmin,
love it too.
Yasmin, thank you.
I'll always have a coffee with you one day.
Yes, and another conscious conversation. It's going to be epic. I can't wait. I've never been to
So
Perth,
good.
so I'm going to come visit. But I want to acknowledge you for the incredible work that you do, the journey you've been on, and where you are right now. You're an amazing soul. I suggest everyone going and following you because the stuff that you do is so important, so relevant, and is so impactful. I've been inspired by that work and it's incredible. I haven't experienced yours in person, but I can't wait to. I have heard amazing things.
Soon.
But also for being it's very soon. Also for being so open and raw and vulnerable on this conversation. I know that whoever's listening is going to get something out of this, if not a lot of value. So thank you so much for connecting with me so long ago, but then also sharing so much on here. It means so much to me. So I'm so grateful for you and thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. It's been a pleasure.
Amazing. Where can people connect with you online if they want to find out all the things and attend and buy and cacao and all that stuff?
So for right now, the best place you can find me is on Instagram at Yasmin_Eve. That is where I share a lot of my resources, tools, tips, bits and pieces. It's like my favorite place to be right now. So I would say start there. Or if you are keen to try some cacao or find out more about what it's about and why it's powerful and all of those juicy things, you can find us at Cacao_Collective_AU or at www.cacaocollective.com.au.
I love it. What a great spokesperson. So definitely connect with Yasmin because she's an incredible human.
Connect,
as you've heard.
come and play.
And if anything in this has inspired you, triggered you, or has stood out to you, contact us. We love connecting with people, but also screenshot it. That would help the podcast out so much. If you want to leave a review, that'd be friggin' awesome. I don't know if any cacao will be sent out for that review, but go get some cacao while you're at it as well, because I can't wait to try it. I can't sit here and be like, it's amazing. Cacao is amazing, but how you've spoken it up and what I think it's going to taste like should be amazing. So I'll confirm in a week. But I can't wait. So until next time, Yasmin and everyone watching, I will speak to you soon and stay conscious. Peace.